Welcome back to Hardware Unboxed. A couple of days ago, you might have seen my video discussing the best PC games of 2018, and there were some absolute rippers in there, including Forza Horizon 4, which our community crowned as the overall best PC game of the year. But while there were lots of enjoyable games released on PC this year, there were also a ton of very disappointing games, and we're going to go over some of them across 5 categories in today's video. Once again, we asked the wonderful members of our Discord community to chuck up some recommendations, and there was an overwhelming number of nominations for one game in particular. So let's get into it. We're starting off here with the big one, the worst PC game released in 2019. Now we could go and find some terrible, obscure game released onto Steam that no one played and declare that the worst game released in 2018, but that doesn't seem right. Sure, there are lots of awful games released every year that no one pays much attention to, but to truly earn the crown of the worst PC game of the year, it has to be something a lot of people played. The overwhelming majority of our community nominated Fallout 76 as the worst game of the year, and I can't think of a better title to win this coveted award. Fallout 76 was not just a very disappointing game at launch, it was also outright bad, a game that really no one asked for or wanted. Since the game was announced, the community has expressed nothing but disappointment that the next Fallout title was a weird, broken multiplayer cash grab. There was perhaps a little bit of hope around launch that it might be a good or interesting game, but that was quickly dashed when people actually went and played it. Fallout 76 is bad in a number of ways. As a big fan of the Fallout series personally, the biggest problem to me is the lack of NPCs, which leaves the game world empty and devoid of character or life. There are enemies around the place, you occasionally run into other players, or you can play as a group, but some of the best parts of previous Fallout titles were the intricate, interesting, and well-written quest lines. None of that is present in Fallout 76. This means that when you're exploring the game world, you're unlikely to run into any sort of meaningful quest, which just makes the game boring. On top of that, Fallout 76 looks bad, it runs like crap, and it's filled with technical issues ranging from broken quests to bugs to network issues and crashes. Bethesda's creation engine is one of the worst still in use by a major game studio in 2018, and I reckon a lot of the problems with the game came down to its developers needing to spend a huge amount of time just to integrate multiplayer into the engine. By all reports, this was a massive technical challenge, and I wonder how the game would have ended up if the developers spent less time on that and more on actually improving the in-game content. I could go on about the problems with Fallout 76, but at the end of the day, it was criticized by reviewers, it was criticized even more by gamers, and it has quickly received price cuts due to all this negative feedback. Plus there was that duffel bag controversy, so throw that in there too, and Fallout 76 becomes the deserved winner of worst PC game of the year. To be honest, Fallout 76 could probably take out a number of the categories in this video, but when it comes to optimization, I think it's just edged out by another highly disappointing game released this year, Just Cause 4. Just Cause 4 sits in a special group of PC games released this year that doesn't run particularly well on PC. You can throw Fallout 76 and Assassin's Creed Odyssey in there as well. We ruled out Assassin's Creed Odyssey though for this award because while performance sucks, some areas of the game do look spectacular. And we ruled out Fallout 76 because it looks like garbage and runs terribly, but does run noticeably better than Just Cause 4. With Just Cause 4, you hit with the double whammy of a game that doesn't look amazing, but also requires an NVIDIA GeForce RTX 2080 Ti to consistently play above 60 FPS at 1440p, while no card we benchmarked averaged 60 FPS at 4K. To make matters worse, some areas of Just Cause 4's graphics have been noticeably downgraded since Just Cause 3 was released back in 2015, in particular the water effects. Most other aspects to the graphics look the same as well, so it's not like Just Cause 4 has compromised in some areas to improve others. Yet Just Cause 3 was playable on a GTX 980 Ti at 1440p with frame rates over 60 FPS. And it's not like Just Cause 3 was particularly well optimized at the time. Fast forward to Just Cause 4, and that same GPU is good for just 45 FPS on average at 1440p for very similar visuals. I don't think there's any way to describe that sort of result other than a massive fail on the part of Avalanche Studios. Sure, it does seem the game runs better on consoles, with Avalanche doing some work to get their Apex game engine running better on a very weak CPU, But even then, the resolution of the game on consoles is not great, and it's clearly come at the expense of PC gamers who Avalanche basically forgot to optimize the game for. The state of Just Cause 4 on PC in 2018 is simply not good enough, and that's why it's taken out our award for Worst Optimized Game of the Year. There was only one real standout candidate for the worst graphics category, and that game is again Fallout 76. This is a major AAA title released in 2018 from one of the world's biggest game studios and publishers, yet it looks absolutely terrible, and as we've mentioned earlier, delivers terrible performance to match. Fallout 76 reuses a lot of assets designed for Fallout 4, a game that came out in 2015, and at the time didn't look all that flash. Fast forward 3 years, and with very few changes made to the presentation of the game, Fallout 76 looks even worse relative to other games released around the same time. Some aspects of the lighting system are the only graphical effects that look half decent in the game. Occasionally you can spot some nice vibrant foliage and volumetric lighting. At other times you're left with unimpressive geometry, rough textures, a poor material surface simulation system, terrible shadows, lackluster water, bad anti-aliasing, and Bethesda's typical janky animations. This looks like a 5 to 7 year old game visually, yet it was released this year. On top of that, the game is rife with technical issues ranging from launching with the 64 FPS cap, which has since been removed, but the game still stutters bizarrely above 64 FPS. It does not properly support ultra-wide monitors. Some areas of the game, like the map, inexplicably perform like garbage. There have also been widespread reports of crashes and other issues. So Fallout 76 is a clear winner in 2 categories this year. Hopefully with Bethesda's upcoming games, they completely rebuild their game engine from scratch, because the creation engine they're using right now is fundamentally broken and flawed at this point. Worst stability is a little different to the other technical categories we've just been discussing. We've talked about the worst optimization, or how a game runs relative to its output, and about the worst graphics. But I've included an extra category here for the game with the worst stability, the game that crashed the most when we played, or simply refused to run for bizarre reasons. And that game was Kingdom Come: Deliverance. Now, this game isn't bad per se. In fact, I played the entirety of it and quite enjoyed it. There's a lot to like about the medieval setting, the quest design, and the punishing combat system. But the game was not shipped in a good state. In fact, despite the game receiving several patches while I was playing through over the course of a month or two, it never seemed to become stable enough for extended periods of gameplay. Instead, Kingdom Come: Deliverance would crash roughly every hour, sometimes more often than that on my system, and it wasn't just me that experienced these issues. Various forums are filled with reports of just how unstable the game was on PC. To make matters worse, the game included a highly restrictive save system, so when the game did crash, you were almost certain to lose a lot of progress. This basically forced gamers to install mods to fix the save system, simply so they could save often enough that crashes would have less impact on progress. Now, I'm not 100% sure how the game is holding up these days. I've heard there have been even more patches since I last played that have improved the situation, but that's not stopping Kingdom Come: Deliverance from featuring in our worst PC games of 2018 list. The simple fact is, if a game is buggy, broken, or unstable when you launch it to the public and begin charging real hard-earned cash, that's completely unacceptable. Gamers simply shouldn't have to put up with broken or unfinished products at launch. Developers should delay the game and get it right before they start selling it. This last category might sound a bit familiar to our worst game category, but hear me out here. When Fallout 76 was announced, a lot of people immediately thought it wouldn't be any good. Multiplayer Fallout built in the creation engine with the same graphics and systems as Fallout 4, yeah, that pretty much is going to suck is what a lot of people are thinking. But I feel another category is appropriate to capture the most disappointing game of the year. The game that looked cool when it was announced, the game that was highly anticipated by a lot of people, and one that ultimately did not deliver when it was released. There were a lot of games that I felt fit this category in 2018, but after discussions with our community, the ultimate winner is Sea of Thieves. Developed by Rare, Sea of Thieves was supposed to be the big Microsoft exclusive game for the first half of 2018. In the announcement footage and subsequent demos, it looked very promising, a cool multiplayer game where you sail around the high seas, act like a pirate, pillage stuff, shoot others with your flintlock pistol, and more. The water simulations in particular were absolutely stunning. But on release, the game simply lacked content. All of this talk of a true pirate simulator you can jump into and have fun with friends turned out to be a bit of a bust, with almost zero variety to missions or enemies. There were always a few questions before launch about, what you would end up doing in Sea of Thieves, and the developers were a bit cagey about the goals and objectives, as if it was, some big secret for players to uncover. But in the end, it seems the developers weren't really hiding anything, and despite the game being in the works for 4 years, Sea of Thieves wasn't much fun after the first few hours. Other games I considered for this category included the remarkably shallow Far Cry 5, Battlefield 5 that launched effectively unfinished, and Just Cause 4. But the most disappointing of that bunch is definitely Sea of Thieves, hence it's the deserved winner here. And that pretty much wraps up this video. Overall, I think 2018 was a bit of a mixed bag for PC gaming. A few great titles, but also a few disappointing ones. A lot of the year's best games turned out to be console exclusives like God of War, Spider-Man, and Red Dead Redemption 2, which us PC gamers can't play unless we also own a console. Hopefully there's a few more multi-platform winners in 2019. As always, you can subscribe for more Hardware Unboxed content, consider supporting us on Patreon to get access to our Discord chat and monthly live streams, and I'll catch you in the next one.